Hello, Michael Clerizo here at the Watchmakers Club event in London, and I'm here with Andreas Strehler, a very well-known, highly regarded watchmaker, and we're here to ask Andreas a few questions. And what are the unusual things about Andreas? There are many. One of them is you've had a book written about you by Michael Horbreck and Alexander Krauss. And I was reading this book on my way here this evening, and a number of interesting facts popped up. The first one, and most interesting one, I think, is you loved to bake as a child.
Yes, I still love.
You still love to bake.
I love to bake and to cook.
Because the unusual thing about that is chefs usually have attention deficit disorder. Is they can't concentrate on anything. They like to keep running around the kitchen. Baking is like science. You have to concentrate on it. It's like watchmaking. And I wonder if you've ever seen any link between your early love of baking and your subsequent love of watchmaking.
I was growing up in the bakery of my grandfather, and I always wanted to become a pastry artist and something like this. But then it happened that my grandfather died and we had to sell the bakery. And so I changed idea because my father is collecting watches. I was more and more connected into watches and techniques, mechanics. And so finally I became a watchmaker. But only, let's say 5 years before, I would have become a baker.
And there's another part of your childhood I'd like to discuss. First of all, like many watchmakers, this would include Roger Smith and Vianney Halter. Your teachers told your parents always you were very intelligent, but you never applied yourself. And is that because you found things that were being taught in school simply not interesting because they weren't about mechanics? Or
it's a bit, I found out later that it's all about motivation. In school time I wasn't motivated to be in school. I was more interested to mechanical things, to chemical experiments, to repair something than being in school, doing homework and so on. And I was not the best in school by numbers. But when I moved from school to the watchmaking school, I immediately became the best of the class because I was motivated. Everything I did was for making watches. And this was the highest motivation I had. I didn't need to train especially to do homework more than before, but I was motivated. Motivation is the best driving motor you can have.
okay, so I'm curious now, why were you motivated as a child? You had a collection of cuckoo clocks, and you would set them whenever anyone came to the house. They would stay in your bedroom, and you would set the cuckoo clocks, all of them to go off at the same time.
Even not at the same time, so that there was noise all the time. So. But I had the wall on side of my bed was full of cuckoo clocks and the souvenir clocks and so on. And yeah.
So someone was staying in your room, and they would not know this was about to happen. It would be a total surprise.
No, they saw it would surprise because everything was moving, so they understood immediately that something which is different in my room.
So already mechanics were a way almost of interacting with the world for you. Not the only way, obviously, but it was a way of announcing your presence, of saying,
Sure.
people, I'm here.
Can be, yes. Yeah, for me, it's I'm a quiet person, and today I have my watches to show, but before, yeah, it was different.
One of the most interesting quotes from you that's in the book is you said you want the watches you create to appreciate time. Now
Yes.
that's fascinating because many people don't think of watches as having a feeling, like appreciating time. I'm wondering why you said that, and how exactly does a watch appreciate time?
If you make just a watch as a product, just a product to a good to sell, it doesn't appreciate time because it has the only purpose is to be sold. And I create my watches as a timekeeper, as a mechanics which shows the time, but also all the elements which are made to stay long term, not just for the moment. They are all built to be repairable in the future. Can be repaired by good watchmakers. So that's what I mean. So that it's not made for the moment. It's made for the future, for history.
So the watch doesn't just keep time, it also will appreciate time, which means it will live for a long time. Is that sort of
Yes, and it can be repaired again. So, if you take an example of a good made watch by, let's say, Abraham Louis Breguet, 200 years ago. If it's one of his watches and it wasn't destroyed by a bad watchmaker, you can take it apart, clean it, put it together, and it will work. If you take an industrial watch, let's say even a Rolex 40 years ago, made, it's an industrial product. You will have the possibility to take it apart, clean it, but then you will find worn parts you have to replace or to remake and so on, because it's not made to. It's a bit strange to say forever, but it's made to, as a product, it's made, yes, it can be repaired by replacing parts, but not made in the sense that you don't need to replace parts to maintain it. So for this reason, I make my watches a bit more, with more reflection, how I choose the elements, how I choose the sizes, that it stays longer.
And also, you've said at times that you think of yourself more as an inventor, or as an inventor and a watchmaker. So is there always this desire to change, to improve, to come up with something new, to innovate?
Improvements, innovation are the base of our civilization. For me, I have a sense of technical analysis. Everything I see, I think, why is it like this? Should it be like this? Could it be better? Everything I see. It can be from a simple train element to a complex mechanism. My brain works like this. And especially on watches, because I know a lot of watches. And an inventor, you have to see a bit the story that, like every boy, normal boy, let's say, who is technically interested, he takes apart everything. The same was with me. I took apart everything. But one day my father said, "No, you don't disassemble my watches." So I had to imagine how could the mechanism be inside to make this indication outside. So this trained my imagination. A good friend of my father came from a tour where he was buying watches. He was in the United States buying watches, brought them to Switzerland. My father was one of the first to visit them, and he had a highly complicated pocket watch with him. But which didn't belong to him. It was he transported it for another watch dealer, and I saw it. It was interesting, and I said, "Can I take a picture of it?" So I was equipped with photo equipment, everything, and he said, "Yeah, do it." But what he didn't know, I took the hands off the dial off, and I wanted to take picture of the mechanism itself. I was interested to see this, not just the watch, but.
And so you did that, did you?
Yeah, I did it. I disassembled it. I reassembled it, and I gave it back.
And he never knew.
He never knew, but the owner of the watch did, because he was a good watchmaker too. And he found out that I touched the watch, but I didn't destroy it, but probably I didn't set the hands correctly. It was in the age of 16 or 17, so sure, you can't know everything. Probably the hands didn't been on the right position, and he found out that somebody touched it, and so he found out. But it was never a problem. We still talk together.
He still spoke to you after that.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I'd like to go even further back in the past, because one of the things I've always noticed about speaking to you, if you speak about great watchmakers from the past, like Abraham Louis Breguet, John Harrison, Berthold, any of these people, it's almost as if you spoke to them 2 or 3 days ago. Do they seem to you to still be alive, to still speak to you? Do you still learn from them?
I learn from them, not from the word. I learn from them from their work. Like I do analysis of everything I see. When I see a watch of them or a picture of the watch or something, I'm reflecting, why did they it this way and not the other way? Why did this watch didn't been used or something like this? I had the possibility to see a lot of interesting watches of Berthold and Breguet and so on, and each time I did an analysis of it, I have a kind of feeling. Not only famous watchmakers, it's also industrial products. As an example, I had to do the chronoscope for Chronoswiss, which was based on the Enica movement created in the 70s. At that time, when I created it, most of my colleagues created everything in Valet de Joux style with the Gothic forms and so on and so on. And I said, no, it has nothing to do with this watch. This watch was created in the 70s. We built a chronograph movement on it. So let's imagine the dimensions and the production ways like it was done in the 70s. So it's a proper product, like it would be done in this time. So I always work when I work for my watches, so it's in my style. If I work as an engineer for another brand, I work in their style. So because I analyze their product and it has their proper style.
But do you feel as though, regardless of whether it's an industrial product or a watch from a great watchmaker, like a Breguet, there is something of that watchmaker's personality, of their...
Sure.
It's in there, hey?
Yes, it is. Sure, Breguet is a bit difficult because he has a lot of watchmakers. Other watchmakers are more typical, like Lepin, as example. He had a more proper style. Berthold also. It's their style. It's their way to think.
Okay. Now, you're also very well known for doing a lot of work for other brands. I know a lot of it you can't talk about, which is fine. But I'm curious about something. Do you do this partly because with your own watches, you can't possibly use up all the ideas that you have? Do you enjoy the challenge of working for other people?
So I work for the companies through my company, which is called Urteil. So this is a job for not only for me, it's for my team. Sure, I'm the head engineer, the one with the ideas. It's a kind of challenge in one side, but in the other side, it's part of business. It's business because I am able to do it. And I like to do it. So it gives work for my team. So I do it. But on my own watches, I have a clear way where to go. There are the design, the concept, the mechanics. I do a proper style just for my watches. I don't jump once from this idea to the next and this and this. It doesn't work. I want to make my pure watches that they are like a piece of art where you're doing always your style. When I work for other brands, it's their style. That's their product, and finally also their responsibility to sell it. So they tell me what they want and I make it.
You've used a very interesting expression there. You've said watches are sometimes like a piece of art. Because you and I have discussed this in the past, and you have often said to me, you're a master watchmaker, not an artist. There's a difference.
Yes.
You still feel that way, but what's the difference then?
The problem is that it's not art in the normal way. It's a complex kind of art. If you go back in time, 200 years back, all mechanics has been called art. It was a part of art. In German, especially in the German terms, it was a kind of art. I don't see myself as an artist, as a painter or something. Not a pure creative art. It's also an art of creation, but it has to work. It has to function. And finally, I learned also that great artists, painters, had for certain work they needed years until it was finished. And I found there are much more similarities to my work, what I'm doing, than I was expecting before. And but I don't really call myself an artist. I'm a watchmaker. I think watchmaking is a proper art, but it's I need more distance to industrial products because I don't want to have my watches compared to an industrial product. Sure, there are industrial watches at the same price level as my watches, but they are just products. They are made to be sold. They are made up in requests from the sales department. They say we need animal dial, blue hands, and whatever, and they make it. But I make the watch not because the public wants it. I make the watch like I intend to do it. So it's closer to art than to industrial product. So we need to create a difference between industrial watches, consumer products, and watches made to the customer.
You made a watch that it's a moon phase that runs for how many years?
The precision of the gears between the hour hand and the moon indication makes an error. If you accumulate it until it makes 1 day of error, it would last 2 million years.
2 million years?
Yes. Compared to a normal watch, perhaps every watch would be. No, it's not. It's because a normal watch has a precision of 2.5 years for moon phase. This is due the gear ratio between hours or days and moon is quite complex. A moon cycle takes 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes and 2.8 seconds. That's not just the gear ratio 1 to 29 or 29 and a half. So it's much more complicated to find the gear ratio and without becoming too complex for the gear. And I found the way of moon calculations. I did some calculations myself, and then together with my former professor in mathematics, we found this calculation with 2 million years. And so after having the numbers, it was difficult to find the space in the watch, but I found it.
But why make a watch that will
It's,
stay
n-
that
it's,
accurate?
it wouldn't work 2 million years, and it doesn't need to be set during 2 million years. It's just a number which indicates how small the error is.
Okay.
That's because when it was 2.5 years, sure, the watch will stay 2.5 years, but even watches with 122 years, it's not sure that the watch will be there after 122 years. And simple watches, like it's on certain mid-range or high-end watches already. But I said, why to make it 122 years or 1,000 years if you can do it with the same number of gears up to 2 million years? Why not to make it more perfect with the same amount of work than the others?
Of course, and of course that brings together your ideas about invention and innovation and improvement.
It's a solution. It's even not an invention. It's just a solution of a problem.
Now, a final question. There is another thing you're very well known for. So far, you do not like to make round watches. Will you ever make a round watch, do you think? I know you've done it.
For other people, I did a lot. I did only round watches. Not only, but mostly. I think for the brand Andreas Strehler, I will not do a round watch. The identity is this shape of watch I have. It's not so far away from round. It's only some percentage out of round. But it has to be a unique form. It has to have an identity, and I think it's a good identity. Sure, I could have sold perhaps more watches with a round watch, but then it comes to the other point. I don't want to make much more watches. I don't want to grow my company to make more watches. Because every watch I make is engineered by myself, it's finished by myself, and it's assembled by myself. So every watch which is signed with my name is made by me. So myself. It's not one of a watchmaker team who assembles. It's Andreas Strehler who makes an Andreas Strehler watch. So if it's like this, it has to be my ideas and my touch in the watch.
Okay. That's very enlightening, very informative.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me this evening.
Thank
you
you.
very much.